The Uncle Gold Podcast. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Uncle Gold Podcast. My name is Borna Zuber and today I'm bringing you a special guest on. We're going to talk about a lot of things related to mindset and especially to cycling. In 2019, our company organized a cycling event where we did the Ring of Kerry Challenge, which is a 188 kilometer track here in Kerry. It goes around in a circle and you visit a lot of towns there. A lot of tourists come there every year. They visit by car, by bus, but we did it in a different way. It's usually a yearly event where a lot of people gather up and they cycle the whole Ring of Kerry. It's a great tour. The nature is beautiful. We had a beautiful day and it was really, really awesome. But it was the most challenging physical event that I ever did in my life. It's a long distance to do in one day, and we didn't prepare ourselves the best way that we could. So it was very challenging for the whole team. We were divided into two groups, and one of the groups was a little bit faster, so they went on further on because they were in a better shape. The second group where I was in was a little bit slower, so we took our time to get there, but we did it in the end and it was really, really great. So I think the man that was actually in charge of that group and made the whole group reach the destination in one piece and gave us like mental directions and tips along the way is the next guest on our podcast. He usually coaches people and he helps them achieve the next level in their career or the physical performance. He's big into cycling. He does tours all the time, and people come to him when they want to move their limits forward. And I really did learn a lot from him in those few hours that we were cycling. Well, it was not just a few, it was more like I think we started at 8 o'clock in the morning, and some 13 hours later we finished the whole Ring of Kerry cycles. It was really, really challenging, and at a few times I had the feeling that a lot of us would quit, but we kind of stuck to it and went to the whole track, and it was really, really good. So I would definitely recommend you to do the Ring of Kerry, especially to see it. If you're not a sport enthusiast, it will be better to do it by car or by bus to enjoy everything that you can see along the way. But if you're interested in doing it in this way that we've done it, I would recommend sticking around and listening to the podcast, because my guest today will tell you everything, how you can do it, how to improve your performance, how to achieve the next level in your career. And especially if you have any questions regarding cycling, feel free to reach out to him. I'm sure that you can learn a lot from him. Ladies and gentlemen, help me in welcoming Gerrard O'Connell to the Uncle Gold Podcast.
The Uncle Gold Podcast.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Uncle Gold Podcast. My name is Borna Zuber and I started this podcast to bring value to listeners and invite interesting guests that can share their experiences and thoughts on how to get the quote-unquote gold in life. And today I have a special guest on. We met in 2019, as you heard from the short introduction there. We cycled together in the Ring of Kerry cycle. It's a long race of around 180 kilometers, and we had a really good time. And today I invited him so we can talk a little bit about mindset, cycling, and how to get the best performance out of yourselves in your life. So please help me in welcoming Gerrard O'Connell. Gerrard, thank you for being here on the Uncle Gold Podcast, and welcome.
Thank you very much, Borna. It's a pleasure to be with you, and good to chat with you again personally, and hopefully we'll have an interesting chat.
I'm sure we'll have. As the people who haven't watched the first part here, I'll just do like a short recap. So the cycle that we did is the Ring of Kerry cycle, and I haven't been in cycling a lot. Like I did it when I was a kid, and through high school, and just like recreational cycling, nothing serious. But you, on the other hand, you're very serious about your cycling, and your influence on us as a group there during this Ring of Kerry cycle, I think made a huge impact on the whole group. Can you tell us from your perspective, how do you look at the Ring of Kerry cycle that we did together in 2019, and how it was from your perspective?
Good. So it was very interesting. It was in my view of the world, it was a corporate event. So I was joining a company who wished to encourage their employees to take on a big challenge and work towards that goal. So I didn't know any of you guys other than one or two before we started. We had a couple of training sessions, and then you did some of your work yourself. I gave you some guidance leading up to it. And then the big day arrived. We got the shiny, cleaned up bikes, nicely oil chains, all ready to go. And it was fascinating to observe you guys on the road. We start most of our activities in life full of enthusiasm, ready to go. Everybody is all G'd up. And then as the day progresses and as the hills start to go up a little bit, we become a bit itchy and grouchy and, why do we do this? And it was good. The standout thing for me really was a group of people that I was with were clearly keen. I think what people do on a bike or in any challenging activity reflects how they will behave in the work environment. Mm-hmm. And people just got on with it. They listened. I did a very quick run through of the things I would normally do over a longer period with people, such as cycling safely, good technique so that people brake well, people use their gears properly, and a little bit of event training. And what I was fascinated by was, I think I mentioned to you earlier on, about maybe 130 kilometers into the ride, we were just coming back around towards Glengariff, I think, or Kinmare. I've lost track which one of those. And I knew you guys were tired. There was a big climb coming up. I gave you guys the option. You know what? We've done enough. We have proved what we set out to prove. We could decide we don't need to finish it. But I have to hand it to you guys. You all decided, no. We're going to go all the way to the end. So it's amazing. People can do amazing things once they set their mind to it.
Yeah, agree. I definitely felt the hills. I have to say, I think in the name of the whole group, that we weren't prepared for it enough. We should have spent a little bit more time on the bike. I noticed that people didn't put, some of us did, some of us didn't, but I think we should have prepared a little bit more, just to kind of get the feel for it a little bit more. Leg strength was a big factor here. Also, the amount of time that someone can sit on a bike also impacts like your performance. And I know that the last maybe like 40% of the whole track for me was a pure mental game. Like I didn't feel my legs anymore. My whole body was hurting. And then it was just like with each cycle kind of like pushing myself a little bit more, and I remember clearly that while we were cycling, you had these moments where you would kind of slow down and wait for the other person to catch up, and then you would have a small chat while cycling with the person, and you were kind of motivating us while we were going, and I love that part, and I think that increased our performance as a team tremendously. Tell me, how do you approach like each person individually? I love that part about the cycle the most. Do you notice different things about people, or how do you structure it for each person individually?
Good one. Good question. So there's probably two parts to the answer, and you've already given us the first part. Individuals. Mm-hmm. People are individuals. And in any walk of life, no matter what we're doing, we really need to treat people as individuals. People got different needs, they got different wishes, they have got different capabilities. So I do that individual thing, which comes a degree naturally to me. I work a little bit on it, but it comes a little bit naturally because I'm normally chatty and I'm sociable. And I join it up with the formal training that I've taken myself on coaching. So I've taken 4 different British cycling coaching badges, and each one of those has built on top of the other. And it helps us to, as coaches, it helps us to structure how we observe what people are doing, how we can help them by giving them adults don't necessarily want to be told something.
Mm-hmm.
They want to be kind of led to it gently. And with a little bit of nudging, people realize what is the thing that we should be doing. So for example, if we're climbing up a hill and we're doing a big gear that's going very, very hard, and I ask the question, is that a good gear? Borna, immediately your brain sinks in, well, probably isn't. So go to an easier gear and you make life a bit easier for yourself and you feel good about it.
Yeah.
And you then own it, and you praise yourself for the good result you get, and then you continue to motivate yourself.
Yeah, and making the good decision, right? And that reinforces the positive feedback back to you. So then when you make another suggestion, then the person is more inclined to take another suggestion, right?
Absolutely. Yeah,
that's awesome.
When we treat people as individuals, they're more likely to chat. And when people chat to you, they will tell you things. They'll tell you, oh, this hurts or that hurts. And frequently, I will have the answer as long as I understand that's the thing that the individual wishes at a particular point in time.
Yeah.
So yeah, and you're right, and you put your finger on the other big aspect of this. Even if you're fit, it's a mental game. Your body, you gotta make a choice. If you're starting off with something like this, one of the good things to think about is your body going to tell your head what to do, or is your head going to tell your body what to do? And it becomes a very big thing in cycling, in the sense of our legs become tired, and our legs can communicate with our brain saying, I'm tired, I've had enough, I want to get a taxi home. Or it can work the other way around. Brain says, no, let's do some more.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I definitely felt that at one point, especially in the last part where there was like no energy left. It was like each turn of the pedal had to be reinforced by the mind. Like at the start, you have energy, you have strength, you can kind of do it automatically, right? But in the end, you really have to kind of like, all right, one more. And that's kind of what I used. And it worked. I felt we did a good job there. Of course, we could have done it better. But yeah, I definitely fell in love with cycling such long routes there. Can you tell us a little bit about your cycling career and how it went for you, and what are some of the best experiences that you have from the cycling side? And we'll get into the coaching side a little bit later. But can you tell us that part first?
Good. Okay. So personally, I rode a bike when I was a kid, rode a bike to school, and then I got into corporate life in London, and cycling was the least of my priorities. I didn't cycle. I played other sports. And about 2000, I started to commute to work on a bike. 2 days a week, 3 days a week. Just got on the bike, rode the bike into work, and thought, whoa, it's fantastic. Because I arrive into work full of adrenaline, ready to go. And on the way home in the evening, I'm tired. I've been working on some issues during the day, and suddenly I can leave it all behind. And then I find when I get home, oh, that thing that's causing me problems all day long, suddenly I've had another bright idea, and it then reinforces itself back in again the next day. So that was kind of start. I think that was a particular client for maybe about 2 years, and I was a fair weather cyclist. Wouldn't get on a bike before March because it was too cold. And as soon as November came, it's wet and horrible, wouldn't do that. So it all went to the back burner because I changed clients. I had to go travel. I was traveling for work and business. And then one of my buddies met somebody in the Dublin Chamber of Commerce.
Mm-hmm.
They had a bright idea. I'm sure there was a few pints were involved in this. They had a bright idea and said, why not go and ride 5 days in Spain the following October? 10 months. 10 months. We could do this. Of course you could. It's about 120 kilometers a day and quite a bit of hills. More hills than the Ring of Kerry. Each day. Like anything, in your business world or your personal world or your job world, you've got something that is a target which is 10 months ahead.
Yeah.
So question is, are you willing to prepare or not? And if you prepare, then you break it down. So we set ourselves a couple of milestones. So we decided the first big one was we'd ride 40 kilometers. We gave ourselves about maybe 6 weeks to get to that point. And there was 3 of us, so it helps when there's a number because we motivate each other. So the 3 of us hit the first milestone, happy days. Now we're more energized, we're more motivated, and we're ready for the next one. And we gradually improved ourselves as we went from one milestone to the next. And it was magnificent. So we got to Spain. We had a fantastic time, wonderful group of people, very good food, nice hotels, beautiful scenery, nice road, tarmac. We came back and thought, oh yeah, this is a wonderful sport. And it carries on from there.
All right. What are some of the tips that you would give to people who are just looking into starting cycling, maybe just recreationally now? I know it's still start of the year, so a lot of people have these like New Year's resolutions where they say like, oh, I'm going to lose some weight or I'm going to get back into shape. Would you recommend cycling to start with? And what are some of the tips that you would give for people just starting out maybe?
Good. Okay. Would I recommend cycling? Absolutely 100%. It's good aerobically, and it's good for our leg muscles. Not so much the upper body doesn't really come into it. It's a good way to manage one's weight. By itself, it's not sufficient. One needs to manage one's diet, but there's a virtuous circle with riding a bike and eating well, because the more nutritious the food, the more fuel you've got for riding a bike. And the 2 things reinforce each other. So if you're going to go riding with your buddies on a Sunday morning, for example, you might have 1 glass of red wine on the Saturday night rather than half a bottle.
Exactly.
You might forego the extra piece of dessert, and after a while you just don't miss it. So it works very, very well from a weight management point of view. It's also very good in our joints. So swimming is probably the easiest thing on our joints. Cycling is one of the next easiest. So it's a fantastic. And the other thing is, it's wonderful for the head because we're out in nature. We hear the birds. We look at the trees. The landscape is always changing. It's never the same. As the seasons change, that same stretch of road changes as the season changes. So it's absolutely fantastic. No hesitation whatsoever. Funnily enough, I've just been looking up some statistics on casualties on roads. And it is an issue, especially here, especially in the cities. And personally, I think that as a cyclist, one needs to be cautious and careful. We choose sensible places to ride a bike on the road. We avoid the busy roads, and we take a little bit of personal responsibility. It's very easy to say, oh, that driver, oh, that lorry driver, oh, they did this, oh, did that. We ask ourselves the question, how do we behave ourselves? And again, Borna, you know yourself, in the work environment, the business environment, it's very easy to say,
it's his fault.
Somebody else did this, somebody else did that. We ask ourselves the question, have we got our own personal responsibility? And we take a little bit of care. You could get a nice, good coach, teach you how to cycle safely on the road. And yeah, but definitely magnificent form of exercise.
Yeah, I agree. And how is it from the other side, in the peak level of someone who's maybe going for competitions or looking to do long distances, or really wants to improve their like stats and numbers and really go for the high numbers? What's the difference in like training, and how do people prepare for something like that?
Good. Okay. And this will tie in actually to the beginner again. So for a beginner, for somebody starting, ride once a week. Take a small action. It becomes easier to repeat that action over a period of time. It's something that needs to be done over a period of time. Once, twice, 3 times isn't really enough. You need to do it. You know, if you could, for example, swap your car for a bike on your commute to work, even if it was only 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers, maybe even 3 kilometers. You won't, depending where you live, but For example, here in the city in London, I could commute into the city of London, which is 14, 15 kilometers faster on my bike before I started to train than I could on public transport or anything else.
Yeah.
So one can swap out some other activity, and we're all time constrained, and swap in cycling into it, for example, or a weekends. One longer ride at weekends. And for somebody starting, I would aim for Sunday morning. Is a good time usually because people have families, maybe get up a little bit early before everybody else is out and you're back, and gradually ride a little bit longer at the weekend and supplement it with even one day during the week. And if you can do that 3 weeks out of 4, in 3 months' time, you won't recognize yourself.
Yeah.
So that's from a beginner's point of view. And for somebody who's interested in doing longer distances or doing a bit of racing or some bigger challenges, or go to the Alps, go to the Pyrenees, go to the Dolomites, go to Spain and climb those wonderful mountains, there's a big reward. You get to the top of one of those, you feel tired, but you feel so good. You need to put some more effort in. Simple as that. And the thing to do with it is add a little bit more structure onto what you're doing. And then a Sunday morning ride might become maybe 2 hours or 3 hours. And you need to supplement it with maybe 2 days a week, even 45 minutes. So one could do, there's a whole bunch of different things. And I think in all of those things, Borna, we tend to concentrate and focus on fitness.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I always start safety.
Okay.
And it's a very simple thing, because if you have a crash, it affects your training. It affects your attempt to achieve something bigger down the track. So you want to ride safely. And one of the ways that we help to ride safely is have good technique. And the good technique makes us more efficient. So whatever fitness level we have, the efficiency part of it will multiply it, and you will get the most from what you've got.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably as much as this kind of an interview gives us a steer for.
All right. I remember I visited one. It was something like an exhibition where it was more of a symposium where they invited like 4 or 5 Olympians here from this region in Kerry of Ireland. And one of them was a cyclist. And I remember him talking about his experiences with another team, and he was talking about a particular situation where they lost as a team, where there was a cyclist. He said, like, nothing that I tried would work. They would outperform us. And it gave me a hint that there's more to it than just like cycling away and trying to do it as fast as you can. That there are some strategies and some moves that professionals can do to kind of increase their effectiveness. Can you talk a little bit more about strategies like that, and what do professionals maybe use to make it a little bit closer for people listening?
Oh, good. That's a very good question. It's a very good question, Borna. I'm not sure the answer is as simple as that. I think if the phrase that people continually use, and if we look at the highest level of performance, for example, in the Tour de France or Vuelta in Spain or in Italy, it's referred to, the phrase that keeps coming up again and again is high-speed chess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's a very, very subtle thing. I think for example, we touched on something we were chatting early on, because it was something I'd actually mentioned to you, I think, when we were on that ring of Kerry. Mm-hmm. And this technique, for example, it's called drafting, and it makes use of the science of aerodynamics.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have 2 riders, the front rider takes the resistance from the wind, or the speed they're riding at is generating its own wind, and the rider behind it, who is just very close behind, is in their shadow. So they don't have that wind resistance. And that second rider can save 30 to 40% of their effort for the same speed. So one of the techniques which we discussed was tuck in nicely behind somebody, save your effort. Now the guy in front is going to look around and say, no, I don't like that. You got to go and do something. And then what you end up doing is you do like your work environment, your business environment, you ask yourself the question, am I better off to collaborate or not?
Mm-hmm.
And even with a stranger, you can have a conversation, even at the level that I ride at, never mind the very top level. I've had this conversation with somebody on the road who said, do you want to work with me?
Mm-hmm.
We'll do 5 minutes on, 5 minutes off, 5 minutes on the front, and then switch, 5 minutes on the back. And we both get some benefit. Mm-hmm. And you know yourself in the work environment, collaboration trumps everything else. Short term, you can sprint off and you make a big advantage. But longer term, if we collaborate, we'll all benefit. So that's just one very, very simple thing. And it becomes like the chess pieces in a large group, in a large race going on for 21 days, then it's a very sophisticated degree of collaboration fundamentally.
Yeah. Sounds awesome. I presume it takes a lot of time to get a team working like an oiled machine like that.
Yes, it does. It takes a lot of time. It takes each individual needs to have the skills to ride that bike by themselves, never mind with everybody else. Mm-hmm. Because if you can imagine a team of, let's say, 6, 1, 2, and then 3, 4, so on. If any one of those individuals has got flaws in their technique, they will disrupt what's happening for the others. And Borna, same thing. We see the same thing in the business world. We see the same thing as an employee. If you've got a project team and if you've got 6 members of your project team, and each of them will have complementary skills, each of them will maybe have some specialist skills, but if they don't speak with each other, if they don't collaborate well with each other, then that team is not going to perform very well.
Yeah, exactly.
And the principle is very, very, it's a different technical skill, but the principle remains the same across those environments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And I think this is a great transition to go into the world of business a little bit here. You mentioned earlier that it's great to get a coach if you want to improve your results in cycling. I think that's the same in business and with everything. Like when we start school, like you're learning from a type of a coach, right? And then throughout our lives, the more education we can get, the better. How do you approach coaching, and what's your thoughts on that? Like, can you tell us a little bit more of what you do there, and how does it look from your side?
Okay, so I guess the starting point of all of that is, I agree with you 100%. We are continually developing and evolving as individuals and as human beings. And the question for us really is, are we willing to are we open-minded enough to actually realize we need to learn, and we can learn from a variety of different sources. We can buy books and we can read them. We can join a university course and fast track and condense and get much more structured learning.
Yeah.
Or we can go, sometimes we go to the gym, we get a personal trainer. The personal trainer shows us how to use the equipment. They give us a structured plan. And after a little while, we realize, okay, that individual will teach first, then gradually we'll switch from teaching, which is telling, to coaching, which is a bit more supportive, and then evolve further into simply being available for consultation, just quick call. I was doing this. What was that? What should I really be doing? Mm-hmm. So that and as an individual in the business world, or our personal development, we can use that same approach effectively. So there's a variety of different ways to do it. Obviously, getting a coach is one big part of it, and it's one of these things. It can appear to be an additional expense, but the reality of it is, if the coach helps you stay out of hospital, happy days.
It's worth
and if sometimes we're trying to achieve something that's an important goal for us,
mm-hmm.
helps to have a little bit of support, a bit of technical support, a bit of accountability and moral support, and it helps us. And once we reach our goal, then we realize, you know what? We look at all of the costs associated with it. We spend lots and lots of money on bikes and clothes and all sorts of other stuff. And sometimes it's the learning bit of it is as important as the others.
Yeah. A friend of mine got a coach for just physical strength, and the first thing that they noticed after one Zoom call like this was that he was holding his hands in a wrong position, and he immediately, like after one call, he already noticed the difference in his trainings. So a lot of people say, oh, it takes a lot of time until you see the value of it. I don't agree. I think you can see the value and some useful tips in a very short while, because someone else can see you from a different perspective, and you can't be looking at you from a mirror, right, and doing like self-analysis and writing stuff like that. But when a second person looks from another side, they get another perspective of it, and I'm sure that helps a lot to a lot of people. But as you said, it's sometimes hard to open to that idea. I think the ego can get in the way there. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like, how can if someone is like, if someone knows that they're a little bit like too egoistic and are not willing to bend their will, let's say it like that, do you have any ideas on like how that can be overcome?
That's a very good. That part is the $10 million question.
Yeah, I'm sure that can help a lot of people.
And we see it in all walks of life. In all walks of life, if we've got a very big ego, we know everything. No, we don't need. Nobody can tell us something. Yeah. And therefore, it's that the shutters come down.
Yeah, it's like a wall.
Ears are closed.
Yeah.
And I think in those circumstances, that individual needs to hit a barrier. And I don't mean literally hit a barrier, but hit something where they no longer progress. Or something happens which scares them to a degree, and they think, oh, whoa. And then there's a small chink in the ego, and then there's a small degree of receptibility. And then it becomes possible, if one happens to be close at that point in time, then it's possible to make an intervention and to actually help that individual come along. But you know yourself, if the ears are closed and the brain is closed, very, very difficult.
Yeah. You can be talking all day, but no information is being used or absorbed. Yeah. I know that. You have a coaching business. What kind of clients do you work with? Like, who would be your typical person that would come to you, and how do you approach this whole process of coaching?
Good. Okay. So typically the people that come to me are men and women, and typically 50 plus. They've typically got, they typically are motivated by a number of different challenges. So ladies in particular are much more focused on safety. It's a big generalization, but there's a degree of anxiety as much as anything else. So in particular, cycling, first of all, cycling in general, and then secondly, cycling on the roads. And men, again, in general, tend to think, we can do this, but I want to ride 120 kilometers a day, and I want to ride up one of those Alps, and it's more of a training activity. So it's not strictly true. It doesn't break down that simplicity. And typically what will happen is that I'll coach some ladies who live close to me. Some of them are wives of very good friends of mine, and they start with the riding safely on road. But I do a little bit of improving their fitness. We chat about nutrition, and I help them out with clothes, with cycling equipment and so on. The main focus is what they're trying to achieve, which is riding safely. And then I help them out with the technique and the skills, which works on this. And then they gradually become a bit fitter. And then they think, well, you know what? It's not so difficult. it's not as scary as we originally thought. And I'd like to go and ride in, 40 kilometers in one of these events. And it works the other way around with the men. They think, I want to train. And I look, and I to go back what you said earlier on, one of the big things I do is I observe. So I scare myself with what I see, what I can actually see and detect when people are riding. I stay stum a big proportion of the time. And this is how I do things. Because people don't have the space in their heads to take on all the information. So I pick some things every now and again, and I try and find the timing, like I did with yourself and your colleagues on the ring of Kerry, when it's the right time to share that bit of information. And it's amazing, because if the timing is good, the individual gets it immediately, and not only gets it, but will incorporate it into what they're doing. And that's wonderfully satisfying from my point of view. And then it's a matter of a little bit of reinforcing, because we're trying to change a habit. And when we're trying to change a habit, while we're conscious and thinking about it, we will do the new behavior, whatever that new behavior is. And then as we chat to our buddy and we stop for the coffee, we revert back to the old habits. So then it becomes a little nudge 2 hours later or the next day or whatever it is, until gradually that new habit has begun to form. So I think, so to recap on that, so basically the people that tend to come to me for some help and some advice are 50 plus. They're both men and women, and they are generally motivated by primarily event training or cycling safety and technique. I also do some other activities on the side, which are the lower proportion of what I do. And one is guide and ride. So I research interesting places to go, and I persuade people to come with me. And I'll have researched where's a good place to stop for lunch, where are the good coffee stops. I'll understand where are there risky traffic situations, where the hills are, where it's good to make a little bit of effort. And typically, I'm interested in what's happening in that locality, so I know a little bit about the locality. And then the final thing I do is a bit like I did with yourselves on the Ring of Kerry, which is more take out a corporate group, and it becomes a degree of, it's a challenge, there's a degree of team building involved, there's a bit of personal development involved, and everybody comes away from a day like that feeling, oh, that was really good. It's amazing what one can achieve that one thinks is impossible if you break it down into step, and eventually it all comes together.
Yeah, I agree on that one. Personal development has been a big topic for me in my life. I started a few years ago just by reading books and then trying to self-analyze and do to-do lists and trying to organize my time better and, learning things along the way. I always like to chat about topics like that because I always get something useful out of people. When did you jump on that whole train of improving yourself? And can you tell maybe the listeners what are some of the best materials that they can look at, or what are some of the techniques that you maybe employ, or generally what are your thoughts on this whole improving yourself part? I know that cycling is a big part there, and I definitely felt how it impacted my mindset, because it's directly physically related to how much you can pull off. And it's not like when you're doing the Ring of Kerry, it's not like it's something that's over in 10 or 15 minutes or a 1 hour course. We spent half of the day there. It was 12 hours or something like that.
I think it was.
At one point you have to have some kind of mental, how would I say it? Something that's keeping your mind focused. What are maybe your thoughts on good techniques that can help you focus your mind?
Good. That's a very big question, Borna.
Yeah, so, chuck it down however you like it.
We all come to this from different starting points. And I think some of the things that I value now, which I didn't have 30 years ago, And the thing that crops up again and again is goal setting.
Mm-hmm.
And if one buys into the idea of goal setting and with a very clear goal that follows that SMART acronym, specific, measurable, actionable,
results oriented,
good, and time-based.
Time-based. Mm-hmm.
It's amazing, because if one gets into that, one gets into the whole idea of taking an insurmountable challenge, defining what it is we're trying to achieve, and then breaking it down into chunks. And if the chunk is too big, break it down into a smaller chunk until we find the chunk which we think, oh yeah, we can achieve that. And it could be profitability from a point of view of business, or it could be trying to hit a particular revenue stream, or it might be expanding into a different line of business, or for an employee, it might be a skill set. We might be trying to achieve a particular promotion. And it helps us to structure our approach.
Yeah.
It helps us to do things like, for example, look at what our weaknesses are, look what our strengths are. Mm-hmm. And we could use there's a SWOT analysis. There's a bunch of different models available. If one Googles, there's business models available for all sorts of different interesting things. And that SWOT analysis is a good way to look at what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses, what are our threats, what are the threats, and what are the opportunities. And it helps us to deconstruct what we already have, line it up with what we're trying to achieve, and figure out, well, do we need to improve something? Do we need to educate ourselves on something else?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's probably of all of the things, that would be my number one. I think my second one would be communication.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And communication is a tricky one, isn't it? Because there's, for example, the majority of us have some sort of technical expertise. So now my technical expertise at the moment is in cycling world. Before that, it was the technical world. And one needs to be technically competent to actually function in those worlds. Mm-hmm. And one needs to be able to communicate at a technical level with colleagues, which is like communicating sideways. But one also needs to be able to speak somebody else's language when one is communicating with a manager or a CEO or somebody who's a budget holder, and one needs to be able to summarize what is the key point in that 30 seconds one gets in the lift or past somebody in the corridor, or one gets to a meeting. And if you can't communicate in those fashions, then it's very, very difficult to have one's ideas taken on board or accepted. And on that thread, like I mentioned to you already, which is one of the fantastic techniques I've come across, is this concept of top-down thinking. It's a fantastic way to put some structure and put some persuasion on the thing that we're trying to influence people to do and communicate with people. So if I was starting again from 30 years ago, the two top things I would do, I'd get my head around goal setting and the associated action plans, and I learned how to I would improve my communication. So those two things. And on those lines, I think there's loads of material out there. Some of it free, some of it's worth buying. The one standout thought-shaping book that I've read over the years has been Charles Handy, The Future of Work.
Okay.
I'm still a big fan. I don't know if you know that book. I'm still a big fan of that book. It was published probably in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s.
Okay.
And it predicted the gig economy that we have right now. And the gig economy is a very extreme example, but it basically articulates how that job for life that our parents might have had was not going to be an option for my generation, and certainly isn't an option for your generation.
Yeah, Exactly. We see that more and more where people are working one or two or even three jobs at the same time, everywhere kind of part-time, and that kind of accumulates to a normal salary, and it works.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the job we're doing today, we may choose not to be doing that job tomorrow. We may choose to do some other job, or the job might have disappeared. So we got no choice in the matter.
Mhm.
So we need to be continually developing. You're a big fan, I know, of personal development.
Yeah.
This is one of the engines which helps us to
Mhm.
move on effectively from whatever we're doing at present.
Yeah. You know what I struggled with? Doing like really long-term goals. I agree that goals are very essential to like achieving anything. But I managed to do them like 1 or 2 or maximum 3 years in advance. A lot of people online say like, yeah, doing like 20 years in advance. And when I think it from this gig economy perspective, I'm thinking in 10 years, I'm going to be a completely different person, right? And the goals that I have now will probably change over time. What are your thoughts on that? Like, should people do like these really, really long-term goals, or should they go like 1 or 2 years just ahead with the idea of like, no, maybe I change, maybe I won't like it in the future? Like, what's your perspective on that?
Good. That's a very good question, Borna. And I empathize 100% with that. And it's one of the things I struggled with when I started to do goals as well. I struggled to move between the 1 year, 3 year, 5 year view and to understand when I was planning something, which level I was actually functioning at. And I think that with hindsight, I think that we tend to choose a direction of travel which interests us. So the 5 and 10 year really must be something that we feel strongly about. And if I give an example, my sister-in-law is a nurse, or she's in the medical profession, and it's a vocation.
Okay.
So I would say that she consciously or subconsciously chose healthcare as the sector that she wanted to be involved in fundamentally. Whereas I'm a bit more monetary focused. So I've found something that I did two things personally, again, and I'm going to speak from my personal experience. I loved IT. I love figuring out how things worked and how to build. And I realized there's very good money in IT. So therefore, it ticked my two main personal motivators. And then that gave me a 10-year direction. And funnily enough, subsequently, I realized as I got older and the money was no longer so important to me, I realized actually I value my health and I value outdoors. So I decided I'd move on.
Awesome.
IT was wonderful. It was very good to me. I worked very, very hard, but now I'm into something different. And again, it's a personal experience thing. I've chosen outdoors, activity, cycling, health for the next 30 years. And then gradually I take it back down into the, where am I going to be in 5 years, 3 years, and 1 year?
Yeah, awesome. I love that approach. And you mentioned a lot here already on the next big topic, which is actually money. And I know that a lot of people struggle with that. A lot of people don't have almost any education about money, and it's a big topic for people. I think it's an essential part of this whole personal development scheme, because if you're planning out for the long term, like, you have to take money into account because it just affects so many aspects of our lives. Can you give us some tips there? Like, I know that a lot of people are struggling, especially during 2020, when a lot of businesses closed and when the economy was very affected with everything going on in the world. What are your thoughts on like making money, starting your career, maybe money habits also as well, and how to implement it into personal development goals maybe?
That's a very good question, Borna. And if I had some of the answers for that, I don't think I'd be a cycling coach. I'd be paying the cycling coach and I'd be giving out financial advice. So having set the scene for that, it's a good question. So, and the current circumstances make this an even more delicate subject because people are struggling. Businesses are struggling. It's scary. It's difficult to make rational decisions about what to do next. And it feels like it's all about surviving for the next 12 months, maybe even 24 months until hopefully this vaccine kicks in and we return or move on to some new form of normality. I think if I went back to my earlier days, I've always had this concept of capital investment and operational investment, for want of a better way to put it. So whenever I was considering what was I going to do next, I wanted to build capital. So I wanted to build my experience. And I'd always trade when I was negotiating salary or negotiating contract rates or negotiating on supplying a service. And the negotiation would always factor in a year's time, will I have a higher stock of capital, which will allow me to provide a better service and therefore generate additional revenue. So it's a personal balance. Sometimes we have to focus on what's the revenue coming in this month, this year, because without it, we can't pay our outgoings and therefore it becomes crucial. But we'll sometimes get some breathing space, and we get some breathing space, we're looking at where we're going to go next.
Did I interrupt you there?
No.
All right. What are some of the people that inspire you or figures that you learn from?
Wow, that's a very good one. I have so many people. I don't really know where to start. I think probably a man called, in the business world, a man called Martin Long. And Martin Long, you won't know him, he's not a headline figure. He set up Churchill Insurance. It was the second entry into what's now an established marketplace, which was buying insurance directly, buying it over the phone. Direct Line were the
customer
trendsetters. They were the guys who actually established that business model first. And I was very fortunate. I worked within distance of Martin Long, so I could see what he was doing. I could see how he built a company. I could see how he motivated staff. He was a good man to work for. He was a good man interpersonally. He made a shed load of money. He created a super successful business. And he would have been one of my main heroes, for want of a better word for it. I read lots. I love history. So I love the military commanders. I love Napoleon, for example, magnificent individual, tremendous energy, very, very good in so many different fields. He wasn't just a military genius. He came up with the code, the justice code in France. He did all sorts of wonderful things. He invested in architecture, archaeology, helped to save a lot of the artifacts in Egypt, which are potentially going to be destroyed or lost. He did so many interesting things. And I guess if I go to the sporting world, I have so many heroes in the sporting world. Stevie Gerrard from Liverpool, magnificent player, wonderful character. He carried that team for so many years. He was loyal to that club. He eventually got a reward by helping them to win that European Championship practically on his own. So 3 different characters from business world, historical world, and sporting world.
Awesome. I do the same thing. I try to find people that have a character trait that I like, and then I kind of try to implement it in some sort of way where it's physical or mental or in business or however you look at it. They try to like find one element that they're really good at and then kind of like emulate it. And sometimes people don't get it when you talk about it, and then they're like, well, what are you doing there, right? And it seems like it's not normal or not natural, but it's just that a lot of people try things in a different way. And then at the start, it kind of doesn't make sense. But after a while, when they start getting results, it kind of does start making sense. And especially in business culture, I've seen it change, like working environment and work culture a lot when somebody brings in a new kind of like a method of working or a new concept that already works somewhere else, and then other people start implementing it. People are usually reluctant to new ideas, and then they don't want to be bothered, or they don't want to learn it, or they don't want to just invest time. They just want to stick to what they're doing, right? That's the ego again, or sometimes even a little bit of laziness. And then after a while, they start implementing the new habit and they start getting the results, and eventually it becomes automatic. And that's kind of what I love about learning from people online. And right now I have a situation where, because of YouTube and Google and all of that, you have unlimited information out there, right? Then it's kind of like hard to choose like who to listen to and what people to choose from. And I find it essential to kind of stick to just a few people that you look up to, and like just listen to them, because there can be also conflicting messages, or you can even like lose focus, right? Because if you're only reading about all the tips you can get from everyone, right, you kind of don't focus down and don't niche into one thing that you should be doing, right?
Absolutely, I agree 100%. That's wonderful. That's very well put. That's a wonderful idea, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. I know that it's important as structuring goals. I know that structuring time through the day or the week or month or year, however, I think it's planning out your time and the routines that you build. How does your day look like? How do you structure it? Do you have like planning each day out, or how do you approach your daily routine?
Good. So I do something different now than I used to do 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And probably 10 years ago, I was more structured, I was more rigorous. I could account for every half an hour of my day. I would do like, once we had, go back to the goal setting, once we had a goal, I had a plan. The plan had activities. The activities were a certain amount of time associated with them. And then I would look and break down my month or my week and my day and into chunks. And I had a certain amount of time. I would use that concept of time boxing, which allows us basically obliges us to prioritize and realize there is stuff which we could do, we'd like to do, but the reality of it is we don't have time for it. So therefore, it just has to be left unless it bubbles up to the top, becomes a critical activity again. So when I was doing, and then that works best when it's combined with a degree of review. Because we don't always do what we think. We don't always do what we plan to do. And when we're actually spending our time in our day, we often don't spend the time where we had planned to spend it. So it's important to keep a continuous review cycle and look and see what's happening. And then if something's happening and it's not as exactly as one wishes and it's not helping you to achieve your goal, then change that plan, change something about the activity. But at the moment, especially during the whole COVID, business has dropped off. My day isn't as structured. I can go and ride my bike. So this morning I'm out riding my bike for 4 or 5 hours within a local area. So I'm trying to be safe. So I go and I'm taking some wonderful, we have a wonderful park, beautiful trees. It was lovely sunrise this morning, blue skies, there's deer, there's birds. So I will do stuff which interests me, isn't necessarily helping me from a business point of view. And when the time comes to change the balance, then I'll rebalance things.
Yeah. I think this year, a lot of people realize that it's not just about business, that mental and emotional health is super important. And I think a lot more people got into that space where you said like, oh yeah, it won't be focused on business, but it'll be focused on myself and how I feel. And I feel that should have happened actually before. I feel that too many people were kind of in this machine mindset. We're just like work, and forgot about like inner happiness, and all these like associations that people usually have are like, oh, that's a time waster, or, oh, that's for hippies and stuff like that. But this year, people really got confronted with themselves, and they're like, oh yeah, it really is important to take care of yourself. And I'm actually glad about that, because people learned a lot from that and got a lot of useful things that they weren't hoping for, which is actually a win-win for everybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Tell me, Ger, I always like to approach the end of the podcast by reminding myself of why it kind of started, and that's to, of course, bring value to people by listening to useful topics. But the podcast is called Uncle Gold Podcast, and the idea is to kind of search for the gold in life. And we touched on it in this recent topic now about exploring yourself and all of that. What would you say is the gold in life, and what would you recommend people listening? How do they find their own gold in their lives?
Very good. So 2 simple things. Do something that you love to do, that you're passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
And the second thing is recognize that over the years, the things that interest us and that we're passionate about will change.
Yeah, true. I agree on that one. I know that a lot of things changed for me in the last few years. Some things that I would think like, oh, this is gonna last a lifetime, right? But it did change. I think you're right there. And doing something you love also, yeah. I think it was Steve Jobs who said that if you're not doing what you love, then eventually you'll quit. And because at one point it will get so hard that only those who are crazy or really in love with what they do will persist, right? And I think that's a great one, because a lot of people just quit because they don't like what they're doing. And even from the business perspective, a lot of people chose careers maybe based on what they didn't like. And it happened to me as well. I took on jobs where I thought that, oh, this is a great learning experience, right? And I from the start, I knew this wasn't for me, but I was like, all right, I'm going to do it because I'm going to learn a lot, or I'm going to get a better paycheck, or that was at the start of my career when I started doing sales jobs. I accepted a job for a company that I knew that I didn't like, but they were offering great benefits, and I was like, yeah, that's great. And I stayed with them for a month or two just because they weren't in alignment with what I wanted. And it became to be clear very soon that I'm not gonna stay there, and just left. So yeah, that's great advice there, Ger. Tell me, if people want to reach out to you and want to find out more about your work, or maybe get in touch for coaching, where can they find you or reach out?
Good. So, Borna, that's a very good question. And my business is primarily word of mouth and personal recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't got around to having the website just yet. So the best thing to do would be contact me at goc9876@gmail.com.
Perfect. We'll leave that in the description below the video. Any parting thoughts for the end of the podcast for all the listeners that are still here?
The lasting thought for all of this is, what do we value most, wealth or health?
Mm-hmm.
And health is more valuable to us in the longer run than wealth. And if we're into our health, then choose an activity or sport that we love. Try a variety of them. Pick on one that resonates nicely with oneself and one's person, and give it your best shot.
Awesome. Gerrard, thank you very much for the tips and advice, and for taking the time to do the podcast with me. Thanks for everyone who's still listening. I hope you enjoyed. Leave us a comment below the podcast on which one of these tips you liked the best and what kind of resonated the most with you. Also tell us, are you a cycling fan? Do you do like long runs, or do you do like shorter routes? And of course, leave us a comment what's the most valuable thing you learned from today, and we'll see you in the next episode. Gerrard, thank you again for being here on the Uncle Gold podcast.
Thank you for having me, Borna. It's been a pleasure.
Perfect. Thank you, Gerrard. Thanks, everyone. Have a great time, and we'll see you in the next episode.
The Uncle Gold Podcast.